So we're going to talk about the U.S. elections today. Because in this particular US election, there's an Indian connection, the BJP logo. I'm talking, of course, about Kamala Harris.
I'ma keep running cause the winner don't quit on themselves.
Now, more on Vice President Kamala Harris, who is the front runner for the Democratic presidential nomination after President Biden stepped aside.
Now, and Vice President Kamala Harris says she's deeply honored to have secured enough delegates to win the Democratic Party nomination.
Kamala Harris really locked up this nomination at lightning speed, making history along the way.
And the history, Whit, is worth noting. This is now the first time that a black woman, a person of South Asian descent, will be at the top of the ticket.
After Joe Biden decided to bow out of the presidential race.
My fellow Americans, I want to take a moment to address some of the hateful shit you've been talking about me. Many of you have said I am suffering from brain worms, or that I have applesauce for brains. Well, I won't mince words, so here it is. Fuck you. You're all a bunch of faggots. End of quote. Repeat the line. So enjoy President Cackles or President Booty Juice? I really don't give two fucks anymore. Biden out.
He passed the baton to none other than Kamala Harris, his vice president. And this is where things get interesting, because for a while it looked like Trump had the election in a bag, particularly after his assassination attempt. He was leading in the polls, but over the last couple of weeks, in the latest opinion polls, she's overtaken Trump and is in line to be the next American president. It's funny because for me, it's a non-lose situation. Because if Trump wins, we get 4 more years of the most entertaining politician on planet Earth. And if Kamala wins, then the massive cope and seethe of all the anti-India Twitter racists will give them a brain tumor, and that's going to be very enjoyable to watch. But then, I know you have a question in mind. Well, Sham has very large hands. Does that also mean yes, ladies? Secondly, what does President Kamala Harris mean for India? Is it good? Is it bad? Or are we in for an ugly surprise? You know, because we've seen that recently, the United States, led by a Democrat president, was accused of orchestrating a coup in Bangladesh, which had an administration that was friendly towards India. So despite calling India a strategic ally, the Americans have, at least in this case, functioned actively against the interests of India. So is Kamala going to be a net positive or a net negative? So let's talk about a lady affectionately called President Cackles. So Kamala Harris was born in California. Her mom, Shyamala Gopalan, came all the way from India in 1958 to study biology at UC Berkeley. Her dad is a Jamaican immigrant who studied at Berkeley as well.
She was born in 1964 to the late Shyamala Gopalan, a cancer researcher from Chennai, and Donald Harris, an economics professor from Jamaica.
A lasting impression on Senator Harris is from the mother as well as the maternal grandfather, who she used to visit very often in India.
After finishing her college and studying law in 2004, she became the district attorney in San Francisco and the first black woman to do so.
In the role, she created the Back on Track program, in which first-time drug offenders could avoid jail time by finishing high school or getting a job.
In 2003, she was elected the city's district attorney.
To be a prosecutor is to really be engaged in one of the most noblest professions that anyone could do and have.
As an attorney, she's credited with introducing many reforms, like making it easier for first-time drug offenders and helping them with reform. But at around this time, some people have claimed that her meteoric rise was due to her past relationship with Willie Brown, a prominent Democratic politician from San Francisco who was the Speaker of the California State Assembly. He has also accepted that he supported Harris's first race to be San Francisco District Attorney, but he also said that he has also supported a long list of other California Democrats, including former House Speaker Nancy Pelosi, Senator Dianne Feinstein, and current Governor Gavin Newsom. In 2011, Kamala then went on to become the first female Attorney General of California.
She then became the first female Attorney General of California in 2011.
As District Attorney of San Francisco, Kamala Harris is credited with introducing several progressive changes, like the Back on Track initiative, which aimed to reduce crime rates among low-level drug offenders by providing them with job training, educational opportunities, rather than traditional incarceration. This program not only reduced recidivism, but also served as a model for other cities. She's also credited with taking measures to increase the safety by forming a special unit focused on anti-gun violence, which helped in significantly improving the conviction rates for gun-related offenses. She defended the Affordable Care Act and played a role in the national mortgage settlement, helping secure $20 billion for relief for homeowners in California affected by the foreclosure crisis. Despite her success, Harris's tenure as DA also wasn't without controversy. A major point of contention was her decision against seeking the death penalty for a cop killer, which stirred significant uproar among law enforcement and political circles. She faced criticism for her tough stance on truancy. Truancy refers to any intentional, unjustified, unauthorized, or illegal absence from compulsory education. It is characterized by a student's deliberately skipping school without a valid excuse, distinguishing it from legitimate absences such as those due to illness or family emergencies, which led to fears that some parents might be prosecuted and jailed if their children miss school too much. This approach received backlash for being on economically vulnerable families. Her office was also criticized for slow responses to wrongful conviction cases and for defending wrongful convictions to preserve convictions at all costs. She's also accused of being hypocritical over her stance on marijuana. She once said nobody should have to go to jail for smoking weed on a late-night show appearance. But at the same time, she also oversaw roughly 2,000 misdemeanor and felony convictions for marijuana possession, cultivation, or sale, according to Reuters. However, she continued to run for senator and she won in a landslide.
In 2016, Harris was elected to the U.S. Senate in a landslide, becoming only the second black woman to serve as a U.S. senator.
I intend to fight for truth and transparency and trust.
She was considered, according to a vote, one of the most liberal senators in all of America. She then went on to contest in the 2020 presidential race, where she really went after Joe Biden.
She put over 1,500 people in jail for marijuana violations and then laughed about it when she was asked if she ever smoked marijuana. She blocked evidence. She blocked evidence that would have freed an innocent man from death row until the courts forced her to do so. And she fought to keep cash bail system in place that impacts poor people in the worst kind of way.
But afterwards, they seemed to patch things up pretty well.
As the elected Attorney General of California, I did the work of significantly reforming the criminal justice system of a state of 40 million people, which became a national model for the work that needs to be done. And I am proud of that work.
Kamala did drop out of the race after getting a grand total of 0 delegates and getting absolutely cooked at the Democratic debates by Tulsi Gabbard.
Now, Senator Harris says she's proud of her record as a prosecutor and that she'll be a prosecutor president, but I'm deeply concerned about this record.
Man, you know, usually meat is cooked to rare, medium rare, or well done. Kamala got cooked to congratulations.
Ran for the 2020 Democratic presidential nomination and dropped out of the race in December 2019 after campaign funds dried up.
But in 2020, despite not winning a single delegate, she was chosen by Joe Biden to be her vice presidential candidate.
Joe Biden then tapping her as his running mate in August 2020.
And went on to become the vice president of the United States. But that has also led to increased scrutiny, and she's garnered a bit of a reputation for word salading.
I don't know what's wrong with you young people. You think you just fell out of a coconut tree? We are in the midst of a public health epidemic that has taken the lives of over 220 million Americans in just the last several months.
Her critics also point out that her biggest assignment as vice president was shoring up the southern border of the United States, but they claim that this is a task in which she has failed miserably. When she was handed the responsibility of managing the U.S.-Mexico border situation in March 2021, since then we've actually seen a significant surge in cross-border migration. By the end of 2021, over 1.9 million encounters were recorded by the U.S. Customs and Border Protection, which was the highest in decades. To put that in perspective, this was nearly 4 times the number of encounters in 2020 under the Trump administration. And the spike didn't just stop there. In 2022, the figures climbed even higher with nearly 2.7 million encounters and almost 3.2 million in 2023. And the year 2024 isn't over yet, and they've already crossed the 2.5 million mark. The influx of migrants into American cities, particularly cities like New York City, has significantly contributed to a housing and infrastructure crisis due to the sheer volume of arrivals and the city's legal obligation to provide shelter. Since the spring of 2022, over 200 205,000 migrants have arrived, leading to the establishment of over 200 emergency shelter sites to accommodate the newcomers.
Mayor Eric Adams says New York has officially run out of room to house asylum seekers.
And many of them actually getting housed in hotels and some other very interesting places.
A plan to erect a migrant encampment on the grounds of Aqueduct racetrack is getting strong opposition by some lawmakers in Queens. It's one of two sites being considered by city officials.
Atlantic City International Airport is one of 11 facilities owned by the federal government that are being considered as a location to house the asylum seekers.
Now see, if I was a migrant, I'd be like, hey, I know New York City is getting pretty full. Is there any space in Disney World right now? The Biden administration is also accused of halting border wall construction, which under Trump had seen over 450 miles of wall completed. And like I said earlier, currently she's leading Trump in many polls, which means she could well become the next president of the USA. So what would that mean for India? Well, it's believed that broadly she's expected to toe the line on US policy towards India, which is generally towards seeing India as a strategic ally and having a strong relationship with the country. But she's had a bit of a checkered track record when it comes to her relationship with India. In 2019, when India abrogated the draconian Article 370, Harris decided to stick her nose into the situation and said that we have to remind the Kashmiris that they're not alone in the world. We are keeping a track on the situation. And which is why she's gotten support from the most radical members of the Democratic Party, people like Ilhan Omar, AOC, Ayanna Pressley, and Rashida Tlaib, who wants to eliminate Israel from the world map. These people, known collectively as the Squad, even boycotted Prime Minister Modi's speech to the US Congress. The same squad, headed by Representatives Ilhan Omar and Rashida Tlaib, put forward House Resolution 1196, a resolution denouncing alleged breaches of religious freedom in India. They've routinely attacked India on Jammu and Kashmir, the farmers' protest, the Citizenship Amendment Act, among other issues. In September 21, on her visit to India, the then Vice President Kamala Harris allegedly lectured India on defending democratic principles in a meeting with Indian Prime Minister Modi. She allegedly even spoke to the Indian dispensation about the Citizenship Amendment Act. The Democrats have also been infamous for their funding of Pakistan. Under Obama's leadership, $1 billion of civil and military aid was offered to Pakistan. However, Harris, to her credit, did try to sponsor a bill to increase green cards for immigrants from places like India and China, even though it didn't pass. Now let's compare Harris with Trump. Who's going to be better for India? We saw how the India-US relations had improved under Trump. Trump was quite a transactional president. If he gets what he wants from you, he'll give you what you want and everyone's happy, in his perfect world. So India and Modi understood that quite well and were able to develop a very good relationship with Trump, highlighted by the Howdy Modi event as well as the counterpart of that event in India.
Namaste Trump! Namaste Trump!
But in the past, under Trump's leadership, the relations between India and the USA improved. Trump also reduced military aid to Pakistan, aligning with India's concerns about terrorism.
Well, the United States has suspended $255 million military aid to Pakistan.
Trump promoted India's role in countering China's influence in the region. He confronted Pakistan's links with terrorism.
Modi and I affirmed our two countries' commitment to protecting our citizens from radical Islamic terrorism. In this effort, the United States is also working productively with Pakistan to confront terrorists who operate on its soil.
He enhanced trade relations and energy cooperation, making the US a key energy supplier, backed India on international issues, including during conflicts with Pakistan and China. He slammed Pakistan at the time of Pulwama. With the Democrats, it's been a bit more complicated, even though the overall outlook is to develop a positive relationship with India. At a recent fundraiser, Biden said that India's lower economic growth projections are due to apparent xenophobia.
US President Joe Biden on May 1 called India, China, Japan, and Russia xenophobic.
He suggested that India's hesitation to welcome immigration is holding back its economic performance. In September 2023, allegations emerged about India's involvement in the apparent assassination of a Canadian citizen.
We are deeply concerned by the allegations referenced by Prime Minister Trudeau. We remain in close contact with our Canadian partners, as the Secretary said on Friday, and we have publicly and privately urged the Indian government to cooperate in the Canadian investigation.
It was alleged at that time that this so-called connection to India was provided to Canada by the American intelligence agencies. The US has also been unhappy with India maintaining a friendship and a relationship with Russia, even during the Russia-Ukraine conflict. On top of that, under the Biden administration, American government-funded agencies like the US CIRF have routinely targeted India for so-called breaches of religious freedom. Indices funded by the American government have called India a partly free democracy while labeling America a free democracy. Let's see which of these two countries has had a violent insurrection in the last 5 years to overthrow their elected government.
They stormed the Capitol.
They were hostile. They were venomous that their country somehow was being taken away from them.
And plotted to kidnap a governor.
A terror plot to kidnap Governor Gretchen Whitmer.
Oh my God, it's not India. So them lecturing India about democracy is like Thanos complaining about low birth rates in the universe. We've obviously seen recently how America has tried to destabilize the Indian subcontinent to further its own interests by conducting a violent coup in Bangladesh, topping a stable government that was friendly towards India and establishing a military-led unstable government in its place. This new government will most likely not be as friendly to India. So even though I believe that the India-US relationship will still be on a positive trajectory under Kamala Harris, it will be relatively stable going forward. But under the Democrats, there's been a bit of a duplicitous strategy towards India, which is something that India will need to watch out for if Kamala Harris does become president. Because at the end of the day, more important for the US than its friendship with any of its allies is making sure that its power over other countries is always maintained. While other countries have agreed to be vassal states of the United States, India refuses to do it and chooses to follow an independent foreign policy by developing relationships with countries like Iran and Russia, which upsets the United States. How much will this government tolerate it? How much will Harris's government be willing to look the other way in order to maintain a good relationship with India, in order to counter China in the Asian region? Will be something that we'll have to wait and see. But I want to ask you, what do you think about Kamala Harris becoming president? Do you think that'll be a good thing for India or a bad thing for India? Let me know your comments in the comment section down below. Other than that, guys, make sure to support us on Patreon or become a YouTube member. I will see you for the next episode. And until then, stay happy, stay healthy. We will see you for the next one. And to all of you, a second love.